Maybe I could do this, look. And then see how I look.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for a very special moment at the narrative. It is time to welcome a legend in the world of photography. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it is time to welcome the one and only Mario Testino. Through his lens, he has redefined beauty, art, and storytelling. Over the years, Mario has worked with the largest global brands, the most iconic magazines, and legendary figures in fashion and art. His work is not just photography, it is a visual narrative of elegance, power, and timeless allure. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mario Testino. Also, welcome the host who will be hosting this Fireside Chat, Dina Ghabbour. She's an entrepreneur and she's also the host of the podcast, W Podcast. Welcome, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. It's truly an honor to be amongst such a brilliant crowd. And I'm really thrilled to be hosting this interview. And as Nardine said, Mario Testino isn't just a photographer. Mario, you truly are a global icon in fashion, art, and photography. From Vogue, from the pages of Vogue and Vanity Fair, to working with the biggest brands like Gucci, Chanel, Burberry, to taking royal portraits. Mario photographed everyone from Princess Diana to Madonna and Beyoncé to the world's biggest designers. And I'm truly honored to be talking to you today.
Thank you, Dina.
So, Mario, there's a quote that I read that really stayed with me. It says, "A person doesn't come from a country, he comes from his childhood." So I want you to tell us a little bit about your childhood in Peru and how it shaped your personality, your career path.
Well, I was born... No, hello, everybody. Sorry. I am Peruvian, like you've just heard, and I've been a photographer for almost 50 years. I started my life in Peru, in Lima. It was pretty amazing, quite similar to here. Staying at this hotel made me think a lot about my youth because it had a very family energy. We grew up, we were 6 kids, and my father had 2 brothers that each had 6 kids. So we grew up with a lot of people, which I think has been quite a determining part of my photography because I seem to photograph groups very well. Energy, I'm not afraid of chaos in a way. And Lima is a city like Cairo, quite chaotic, but quite interesting with a wonderful history. I think
Very
and
vibrant colors.
And very vibrant colors, but you don't really notice it because like here it's a desert, so it's very dirty.
Yeah.
Only in the summer does it get quite beautiful. In the winter it's a little bit depressing, I find it. But yeah, I grew up in Lima and at the age of 22 I moved to London, 1976.
And is it true that when you moved to London, your mother said to you that once you move to London, you will never be fully Peruvian again, and you'll never be fully British?
And she was perfectly right, because I have to say I've lived in England 50 years, but I'm not English and I will never be English. And it took me a long time to realize that. It's funny, I was given an award in England that usually it's given by the royal family, that I have photographed many times, but because I was foreign, I couldn't get it from the royal family. I had to get it from the Ministry of Culture. And you start realizing that really I will always be treated like a foreigner. And rightly so, because I wasn't born there, I don't have their education. And for many years I tried to be like them, but I couldn't. It wasn't really about being English.
Is this in-between identity, this Peruvian British thing, is this why you went back and did the Alta Moda project?
Well, I guess that being out of my country and feeling not Peruvian, you start wondering, where do you belong? The same thing happened to me when I stopped being a fashion photographer, because I decided to stop working for clients and I decided to start working on my own projects. And it's true that you always want to find, where do you belong? I was a fashion photographer for many years, but am I still a fashion photographer now because I do fashion of the people rather than fashion of brands. And am I still Peruvian because I don't live in Peru? I now live in Italy, where my family came from.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Alta Moda project and what it represents?
Well, I went to Peru to do an assignment for British folk, and I wanted to
Get the
include
beautiful pictures, everyone.
I wanted to include all the traditional dresses in my pictures with the models, like two backpackers that visit Peru and that come across these festivals that they do in the mountains where everybody dresses up. And when I went there, I found this archive that belonged to a school of dance, and I borrowed this background from a Peruvian photographer from the 30s that his family had. And I decided to document our costumes because there isn't any document that has them. And I had started working for different Vogues. I was with American Vogue for 25 years, but I wanted more. And all the other Vogues that weren't interesting for the photographers because they were Indian Vogue, China Vogue, Japan Vogue, were asking me to work for them. And I started doing whole issues. And when I would want to define them, I would go to their traditional dresses to try and see where they were from to differentiate them from the American Vogue.
But I have a question for you. Why this shift? Why do you feel like it's very important to preserve cultural heritage?
Well, I actually found that out with myself. When I arrived to England and I wanted to be a photographer, every photographer was English, French, Italian, or American. Being Peruvian, they were like, what are you doing here? What do you have to say? And it's interesting that I had to actually brand myself first, find out who I was, who I could be that would be interesting. And it's only going back to my roots, because at first I wanted to do what the English did. Then I tried to do what the French did. But I could never really do it. And
you lose your sense of identity.
Yeah, and the day I realized I have to go back to my roots. Bathing suits, girls in dressings falling off, running to the party, going to the beach. That's how I grew up. So, I mean, of course, it wasn't just that, but I started like that, and I defined my style, and that was the key, I think.
But what role do you think photography plays in preserving culture in a rapidly globalizing world?
Well, I mean, photography is a document that can help in many ways to communicate things, no? I worked with brands for many years. I mean, many of the brands that I worked with, like Gucci and Burberry, they were pretty dormant brands. They were old-fashioned. They were out of fashion, rather. And by giving them their identity again, they became interesting. I noticed also when I started photographing the royal family that everybody looked at them like something afar, distant, that they couldn't touch. But by making Princess Diana maybe be really real, all of a sudden people could relate to it. And I think there's something about that, about going to the essence of things.
I mean, we see in the picture, it's very obvious that shift from fashion to culture. And it's very obvious in your editorial work. How was this shift perceived by those magazines and people?
Well, one never knows really, because I worked for magazines all over the world and for brands all over the world. So it's very hard to know. I mean, it's only in the last 10 years, maybe, since we have social media, that everybody knows what one did. Because before, when I worked for America, the Americans saw it. When I worked in France, the French saw it. Italy, England, the same. So it's only lately that people actually can see the wealth of the work, no? But I've worked for 35 years, almost every single day. It was pretty intense to keep it up and keep the level. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was...
every single day.
Oh, yeah. The day I didn't work, I traveled with 7 people with me everywhere. It was like pretty intense.
And we went from Alta Moda, which my gut feeling is you embarked on this journey to reconnect with your roots. And it went from Alta Moda to a bigger project, a more global project. Can you tell us a little bit about A Beautiful World?
Well, when I presented Alta Moda in Peru, I was pretty surprised because I had opened a museum in Peru at the time. And
the MATE, Museo de Mate.
Yeah.
Museo
Mate
de
from Mario
Testino.
Mate. And all the people that work with me said to me, Peruvians are not going to like alta moda. They're not going to like seeing the Peruvian dresses because we tend to look at those people in a lesser way. You know, you look at them like,
Understood.
oh, yes, somebody from the mountains. But I did a thorough study of the dress. You know, I didn't just photograph one outfit. I photographed 100 outfits. I really went with an anthropologist looking through the country to define who we had, who we are. Because at the end of the day, you only have your own legacy. You don't have anybody else's one. We have Machu Picchu. You have Egypt. But really, you have Egypt has the pyramids, let's say, or the pharaohs, the temples. But it's the people that sometimes get forgotten. But it's the people that are what is important. I mean, I love the pyramids, but I'm not here for the pyramids. I'm here for you guys to entertain me, to give me new ideas, to, I don't know, to share, no? And I think that we often forget that human factor in our communication about things. So when I presented the project in Peru, people were blown away. All of a sudden, they wrote an article in the main newspaper saying, why did we have to wait for Mario Testino to show us that this is ours? Because all of a sudden, people were proud of what they had. It influenced fashion, it influenced tourism, it influenced everything, really. Because
it also helps, I think, that by the time you did this project, you were already a global name, and your work has been exhibited in huge institutions like the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, in the Museum of Shanghai.
Well, it is true. We all wait for somebody with a certain level
with a
to
certain
tell you
level
this
and a
is
certain
good.
name, and then we believe them.
Yeah.
It's like we don't want to do the work ourselves.
But the interesting thing was that the actual costumes were amazing themselves. They didn't really need me, but
the
they needed
pictures
somebody
were
to
amazing.
look at them.
And
Exactly. They need somebody
Yeah.
to appreciate it, no?
is this what inspired A Beautiful World?
Yes. So when the reaction was so positive, I thought I really am. I mean, it's a horrible way to say I am global, but I am global because I have traveled my entire life everywhere. I mean, I'm here one day, Kurdistan, then next Uzbekistan, then next Mongolia, then next, I'm really, I like being everywhere.
I mean,
And,
you are global also because you've been recognized around the world.
well,
I mean, for those who don't know, Mario's been recognized for his contributions to photography, for cultural advocacy, with honors including the Order of British Empire and the Légion d'honneur. So,
yes, they were kind.
you,
But who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll be talking about the Egyptian.
I mean, he's very humble,
be a
but you guys
pharaoh
need to know
hat.
who we're talking to here.
No, but yesterday we were talking because I met some people that are from my generation. That is really interesting because we're always surrounded by young people, and I quite like the idea of meeting people that have experience, that have done something. And we were talking last night about the years that you put into something, and how when you love something, you just give it your all. You don't stop. You're tired, but you carry on.
So tell me more about A Beautiful World. I know it's a project that it covers more than 30 countries.
It's an interesting project because I started doing traditional dresses, but then I realized that traditions exist not only on the dresses that identify people of where they belong. They also help to identify people through what they do, what religion they're for, what celebrations they do. So I made it broader, and it's interesting that it is all about belonging, and maybe it is my own search about where do I belong, no? Yeah. I could sing a song about that. I think there is something, where do I belong? No. So anyhow, and it's interesting because you travel the world and you try to see what it is that makes a country something that nobody else has. What do you have? I mean, I don't know. We are here. We're not yet at the. It's just that you've changed my order of things.
No, we didn't. No, it's exactly
No, I'm joking. Because there are the pictures, but anyhow, we'll see them. The ones of Egypt will come eventually.
After when we talk about
exactly.
Egypt.
But it's true that A Beautiful World is interesting because all of a sudden I started looking for things that defined each country. But what really was magical is the things that unite the countries, the common points, the places that people can connect.
100%. Because I was going to ask you, did you notice any universal thread? Because we are all very good at pointing out our differences, but we never look at what actually connects us all.
And I think we're going through a really difficult moment in the world, because it is all about separating, and everybody stands for themselves. And I think that this project for me makes me actually love everybody much more, because I'm more interested. I get to know things I never really questioned. I was so busy selling dresses and handbags and shoes that I never got to really think about these details of what makes life so wonderful, what has lasted all this time and carries on, and why.
I'm actually curious to know, when photographing a culture, how do you capture its essence without succumbing to stereotypes? Like, what's the process? It's not easy, right?
Well, it's funny, really. I would love to start talking about all this.
Egypt? You want to go to Egypt?
No. It's interesting to see this, because this is Switzerland, Kenya, and Panama. And they all tell different stories. Panama are the slaves that managed to escape at the time, and they would paint themselves darker to avoid the night. And now they dress themselves in ways to bring back their memories. Was this lady pregnant in the middle of the desert of Kenya? Was quite amazing to see her also carry on in such a proud way with everything. I don't know, men don't get pregnant, but I would imagine that to carry on being like that when you're pregnant with these necklaces and things. And I guess it is these connecting points that I'm finding, because I've been doing Latin America, where African slavery took over Latin America. And then I've been going a lot to Africa and connecting the points, and seeing how the people keep their traditions. And that's what helped them know where they came from. When they were slaves, they didn't have passports, and all these things.
I think by now you know the people of the country better than the people from that country.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, a question that I cannot not ask. While you're trying to preserve cultural heritage through your work and your projects, there's this AI that's a game changer that is coming our way. How do you cope with that?
Well, I look at AI as an assistant, really. I don't look at it as somebody that is going to take something away from me, because I will adapt. I've adapted a million times. It hasn't been easy always for me. I've had to change my strategy, change my.
I think that's the key to success.
Yeah,
adapting.
I think you have to. Well, in Peru we have earthquakes, so the buildings are built to sway, and I remember when I was a waiter, the other waiters used to say to me, "My God, your hips sway because you have to go through the tables, no?" And so, but it's about swaying. It's about how do you approach life, And
so it doesn't scare you.
No, not at all. I already use it a lot. I think it's rather helpful, and it'll be really helpful. It's true, it'll take people's jobs, but those people whose jobs go, they'll have to reinvent themselves. And there's nothing wrong with reinvention. Reinvention is wonderful.
Can we
look
talk
at
about
Madonna?
Look at Madonna.
Exactly. She's still going.
Look at Yusra.
Exactly. Bravo!
I'd love to talk to you about Egypt. And my first question is, if we could see Egypt through your eyes, Mario Testino's eyes and lens, how would you describe it? Because I think a lot of you would agree here that we tend to take Egypt for granted a little bit.
Well,
right?
because you have beautiful historical things that other people don't have. Let's face it, we do too. So I sometimes think we are amazing because of that. But I came this time with one of our film guys who is from Italy. And he said to me, "My God, the people are lovely, no?" And I think that's Egypt for me. I mean, people of all levels, they just are nice people.
Oh, wow.
Well, you see, I started coming here in the 80s because I have a friend, Zaki Sharif, that I met in the 80s in New York.
Hi,
and
Zaki.
that we're still friends. And he brought me in the 80s to do these shoots for, I mean, I was younger and I wasn't so experienced, so maybe the photos are not perfect, like I would change the hair of the girl a little bit and things like that. But you know, I really enjoyed coming because it brought me something else. This is probably one of my favorite stories because it just showed that mixture between the, I don't know, Egyptian elegance, you know, brought into America. I thought it was so interesting to mix it. I don't think that they understood it really well at the time, but maybe now they do.
For your most recent shoot in Egypt, Egypt has a rich and layered culture. So what stood out the most? What inspired you the most?
Well, I have to say that the fashion, I mean, this is interesting because this is a shoot here in Egypt that I did with Linda Evangelista. And the next slide is Peru with Elena Christensen. And it's interesting because I grew up with all this history of my country. Like here she's with the llama, whilst Linda is with the snakes, you know, and here she's in a historical street, whilst Linda was in a historical at Karnak. And I think that, yeah, I mean, apart from these things that are amazing, of course, in Egypt, but it is true that the people are the, and when I've been doing these last shoots, I did some pictures that are going to come now. Maybe we passed one already. I don't know the order of these photos, but there is something about the fashion of the traditional dresses that is quite magnificent. I mean, these are dervish that I like to look at what they wear because really, I am a fashion photographer at heart. This is what I was saying, that the fashion, I find, I try to do these pictures like sarcophagus.
You combined fashion, culture, and art.
Exactly. And this is what I'm liking a lot. And I can't deny that I like clothes. That's what I started and that's my specialty.
We're all a little bit superficial. Remember
I'm totally superficial.
Me
superficial
too.
is great.
I mean, isn't it
I want
fun?
to have a good time. I mean, I'm not stupid. But
being a little bit superficial is fun.
Of course, as long as you're not mean or stingy or
100%.
You know.
Now I have two more questions and I'm going to wrap it up. And they're not related to Egypt. They're actually personal questions, but I'm curious. Because I read that your father said to you, there's what you want and there's what life wants. And life always wins.
Well, I don't know if I'm a bit of a fatalist, but I think that you are already born with so many things that are defined for you. You're clever or you're slow, you're athletic or you're not, you're tall or you're short, you're fat or you know. And so many things are defined, your religion, your family, that I often think that we don't have really much
choice.
I mean, because even when people say to me, yeah, but you work so much. And I'm like, you know, I got a medal from Peru. And I had a friend come from abroad who said to my mother, my God, you must be so proud of your son. And she said to him, well, when he was 8, he had 9 medals at school. So, you know, it's like you already are. I mean, I work hard because I'm born to work hard. That's what my body's
But did you ever feel like life did beat you? Like you wanted something, but it just didn't happen.
Every day, I think that there's nothing. It's not rosy. You know, we make it rosy. You said to me, you're funny. And I'm like, yeah, I want to make my life nice. I'm not going to rely on other people because there's jealousy, there's envy. You know, when I started being a photographer, all the editors I went to see said to me, you'll never be a fashion photographer for obvious reasons. And I was like, what are those obvious reasons? Because I'm Peruvian?
But you know what I just told you about being funny? With all those achievements, and they're not little, to be completely honest. Honestly, you did a revolution, not just in photography, but in fashion and in art. But the thing I do love about you the most, not just that you're funny, but that you're humble.
Well, I'm very conscious that you're here today and you can be here tomorrow. And what do you do when you go down? You become nice? No. It's like people that say, I don't... It's like people that say, I don't believe in God.
Did you guys see what I mean when I say he's funny?
But the airplane is shaking and they go, oh, God, please help me. And I'm like, yeah, which God?
And very honest answer, no? My last question is, if your work could leave behind one message to the world, what would you want it to be?
That's a very interesting question, because I often think that when you're gone, you're gone. But I guess I would say to people to enjoy life. You know, it goes very quickly and we forget that. I mean, I know we have to succeed and we have to earn a living and we have to work, but it's so important to enjoy every day, every minute. Now, you know, I could be nervous, and yes, I started a bit shaky, but if you see me, I'm relaxed now and I'm really enjoying it. I'm not going from this seat. No, it's true. Enjoy life. You know, life goes by quickly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And I wanted to go here, but I didn't go. So live it.
Mario Testino, it's been a true honor
Thank
to
you
chat
so
with
much.
you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all.
Estoy de verdad encantada.
Sometimes I get a feeling I was back in your